What's up, guys? Here I am not minding my business with astrology. Pete Davidson's in the news because he's expecting a baby. Congratulations to him and his girlfriend. His chart is bonkers. I want to talk about it because he's a good example of a lot of things. Honestly, just a lot of things. And I don't know where to start, so I'm just going to start. He is another example, very similar to, but not the same as Katy Perry, of having a wedge type chart. And a wedge chart is just a chunk where all the planets are within 120 degrees of each other, which is a trine. In this case, he's got the leading planet is Jupiter at 1 Scorpio. This is Chiron. It's a planetoid, not a planet, so we don't count it. And then it goes to Saturn at 23 Aquarius. So it's a little bit more than a square, which is 90 degrees, but not quite even a trine. So what that means, when you find someone with all of their energy in, like, scrunched into a part of a chart rather than like kind of all the way around, is they're very, very focused in certain areas of life, and it is very, very difficult for you to pull their focus into a different area of life. It's kind of like a rubber band where they'll just snap back to whatever they were focused on. Like you could get them to do like siblings and communication a little bit, or money and stuff you own a little bit, but then it's like sixth house, and especially with, let's count them, 1 2 3 4 5, not a planet, 6 planets in the sixth house. Should he get some kind of a trophy? But so I don't know him personally, so I don't know exactly how this plays out, but like a bunch of stuff in the sixth house, nothing in the seventh house, a bunch of stuff in the eighth house that we're going to talk about, and then one thing in the 10th house. I mean, does that there's no balance. Like that, if you were to have something in the seventh house, I would say you have a shot at balance because the seventh house is about balance, but there's nothing in the seventh house. By the way, I'm tired and punchy, so I'm just going to say exactly what I mean, and if I phrase stuff weird and you get lost, just drop me a line and I'll try to decipher myself. How's that? Okay, back to Pete though. Now let's count the number of Scorpio planets that Pete Davidson has. 1 2 3 4 5. 5 out of 10 in Scorpio. Okay, Scorpio is a water sign. It's a fixed sign. It is the most intense sign. I was going to put probably before that, but then, I mean, like, Scorpio has a reputation, right? If you do astrology at all, you know that. I think when I was a fledgling astrologer, I published a newsletter, and I think it was just straight up, don't fuck with Scorpio. Like, don't do it. But so there is an emotional intensity to Scorpio that if like that different people with planets in Scorpio, there's a spectrum that some carry it well and are very, very comfortable with emotions and depth and intensity, and others carry it less well and in various different ways get spun up. My mentor described it, and I'm just fondly remembering him right now, as having a Scorpio bee in your bonnet. So just like that's a really great old phrase, but imagine literally having a bee contained in a hat just flying around in your head and what that would do to your sense of well-being. And so, when people who are handling Scorpio less well, or Scorpio on a bad day, when they get riled up, I mean, you just quickly run out of ideas thinking what might calm them down. And the best thing to do is vacate until they kind of wear themselves out and hopefully eventually go to sleep. But the other thing about Scorpio is it tends to be long lasting in terms of the energy that it can generate and sustain itself on. Like, Scorpio is also notorious for being able to run on fumes. And the problem with being so committed and long lasting is that you can push yourself so hard and be like nearly dead before you decide to concede. And this is just me speaking generally, not about Pete Davidson. Okay. But then to add to that, this is a Sun Pluto conjunction. And so the Pluto in its home sign of Scorpio already, like, that just means that it's purified energy, like Pluto and Pluto sign. And then having the Sun conjunct Pluto, like, so take what I just said about Scorpio, and there are different ways to handle and manage this energy. But there is no way that I am aware of, that I've stumbled upon yet, that I can point to as like, this is a good example, to manage a Sun-Pluto conjunction in Scorpio with 5 planets in Scorpio and have a middle-of-the-road humdrum, I live in the suburbs and go to my boring day job and come home and, like, nothing else really remarkable happens. Like, those are incongruous ideas. You need to be able to expose yourself to an extreme in some way, shape, or form pretty constantly when you carry this much Scorpio energy to feel like you are living your best self. And so I don't mean you need to go skydiving every day. I do mean that you need to find a way of existing that works for you if you're carrying this much Scorpio energy that, like, gets your heart racing or allows you to be really intensely focused in what you're doing, and be doing something that's probably not mainstream, probably. Like, again, when I find an example of something that contradicts this, I will be the first to tell you. It's just, I haven't seen it yet. Like, the key with Scorpio to having a satisfying life is either doing stuff intensely or doing intense stuff. And those can be different things, right? So there are people who have a lot of Scorpio energy who are, like, really intense researchers and they throw themselves into their work. And there are people who carry Scorpio energy like this who they are morticians. And so they do work that has emotional intensity, right? Pete Davidson is a comedian and an actor. And so, like, what? Right? Like, if I were to show you this chart and not tell you who it was, which of course I can't do because I'm midway into recording this video, I don't think you would necessarily guess that it's Pete Davidson, because, again, we have 5 planets in Scorpio and then 3 planets in Capricorn and 1 in Aquarius and 1 in Sagittarius. The Sagittarius, that's a humor sign, and so is Gemini, and he's Gemini rising. And I just jumped all over the place, but that's the thing, is, like, when I saw this chart, I had 12 different thoughts at the same time. So I'm giving you some of those 12 different thoughts that I had all at the same time. So, like, a Scorpio sun with a Capricorn moon, and 5 planets in Scorpio, and 3 planets in the 8th house. Those are intense / serious. Like, Capricorn moons aren't known for fun, are known for serious business, like being business-like, or having mothers who were very business-like, or mothers who were depressed. Capricorn is not the sign for the warm and fuzzy, just generally speaking. Pete Davidson, like, notoriously loves his mom, lived with his mom, probably doesn't still live with his mom. But, like, so I'm not But moon in the 8th house, that tends to be intensity in the immediate family. We know that his dad died on 9/11. So that's that's moon in the 8th house, but then also it's the Sun-Pluto conjunction. Find me someone who has a Sun-Pluto conjunction or a Sun-Pluto opposition who doesn't have some kind of hang-up issue or notable biographical element about their dad. And it can be their dad died young, their dad was missing, their dad was really famous or really powerful or really emotionally intense. Sun Pluto stuff is daddy issues, but you can take that to mean whatever you want it to be. It can be issues with dad, it can be daddy issues, it's something. And I'm really not trying to be offensive here. That's just a calling card. So if I see somebody with Sun Pluto, I will start listening for stuff that has to do with the relationship with the father, because there's stuff there. And if there's not stuff there, it then becomes interactions with men or interactions with very powerful people, which is Pluto, and then the sun is your ego. So if it's the Sun-Pluto conjunction, part of doing your ego is interacting with power, and that's just felt like it's a part of you. But if it's the opposition, that one's tricky because with oppositions you decide who plays what role. So sometimes you're the sun, and then then you're projecting Plutonian stuff out. So you're projecting this person's the enemy, or this person's out to get me, or this person's way more powerful than me. Or sometimes you're the Pluto person, and so to feel like the Pluto person, you feel nasty or dirty or really powerful. But it tends to be you when you are embodying Pluto and Pluto alone, you can feel like the underdog, or you're being shady, or you're being underhanded, and then you're projecting out oh, they're the sun, they have this big ego, or they're able to accomplish so much and I'm not able to accomplish nearly as much. It's just complicated. And so also when you see Sun Pluto, that's a sign to shut up. As an astrologer, it's better if you let the person tell you about their Plutonian issues over a period of 10 to 20 years, because they're never fully going to open up about exactly all of the things that make them Plutonian. That's just not, they're not going to come bounding up to you and be let me tell you everything. It's always complicated. There's always a lot to it. And if you, in my experience, because I deal with a lot of Plutonians, when you try to call them out, they'll be no, what are you talking about? And then 5 years later, they'll be oh yeah, you were right when you said that thing. So there's really no point, guys. Continuing on though, because I can go forever. So we are, moon in the 8th house is just emotional intensity regardless of what the family background is. Sun Pluto is emotional intensity really regardless of what sign it's in, but in this case it's Scorpio. And then we also have to discuss the fact that Saturn is squaring the Sun-Pluto conjunction. So Saturn-Pluto people, and I am a Saturn-Pluto person, so I get to say this and I don't have to apologize. We don't play around. Either we're just troubled, and either it's we had extreme difficulties that were external to us in our upbringing, or there is extreme difficulty within our heads that we have to work to manage well as we mature. Saturn is about growing up to be, whatever, fill in the blank. And so to have Saturn and Pluto in aspect, it's as you mature, you need to learn how to use Plutonian energy responsibly, which is a Saturn thing. And you learn usually by screwing up about 1,000 times. And generally the aspect is known for being between a rock and a hard place in some way, shape, or form. And it depends on what houses are involved when, 10th house, that's authority. 6th house is a lot of different things. Coworkers is one of the things that you find in the 6th house. Health, mental health. And when I see this number of planets in the 6th house, mental health often is a thing that comes up, but it's like a perception issue. And Pete Davidson is on the record for having mental health issues. Like, he talks about it. So, but I also don't want to trample all over it and make like a lot of declarative statements that are unkind. So that's the line I'm trying to toe here. But I think about the 6th house as like being under a magnifying glass or looking in a funhouse mirror about reality, because like sometimes when you focus too hard on reality, reality becomes too real, and you just like get really focused and can't necessarily pull your focus away. And this is somebody who has, a shit ton of Scorpio energy in this house, and then Saturn making a harsh aspect into this house from the 10th house. So it's just like, that's a lot of pressure for one human being in the energy that they embody and carry. 6th house can be really prone to myopic thinking, and there's just so much happening here that I'm really not going to parse all of it because I would never stop talking. But what do I want to say next? Often also, like when I see Venus in the 6th house and it's a woman or someone who identifies as female, those people with that can be like really, 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 really into nutrition and exercise and wellness, well-being, etc., etc. Maybe they love cleaning, and I'm not exaggerating. Like the 6th house can be quite fastidious, but often at some point, and again, this is not everybody, but a lot of people have some kind of issue with eating disorders. And yeah, I'm just gonna say that. And I don't know why that is, but that just is a thing that comes up a lot. And that the 6th house can be about perfection and perfecting things. So what's one way that you can perfect your body? By like eating only the best or nicest stuff, but that perfection begets perfection begets perfection, and it's always like, I can do better, I can do better, I can do better. So that's me kind of backing into that statement. It's just something I see a lot, but that's just information for you. Back to Pete Davidson. So he is in the generation that has Saturn and Pluto in aspect. And if you want to look this up, you can. But now I'm going to go on a different tangent. A lot of the time when you have a specific planetary energy like Saturn, Pluto, or we're going to talk about this one in a minute, the Neptune, Uranus, when they aspect each other again in the sky, you can, I was going to say tend to, but I'm revising it to can, have major life events occur. So he has the square, and on 9/11, Saturn and Pluto were opposing each other in the sky. So that's just information. You can look it up. You will see. It's an almost exact opposition. And that really fit the vibe of the time because that opposition continued, and there were some other planetary things that were happening back then that I'm not going to cover today. But he is a good example of when that energy repeating and a big life event occurred, which of course was traumatic. Again, Saturn Pluto doesn't play. And I kind of wish it wouldn't for my own reasons. Okay, now we're going to talk about this Neptune-Uranus conjunction. This is a thing that happened in the 90s. If you are a 90s baby, especially early to mid 90s, you probably have this. It is an interesting situation indeed when you have two major planetary Titan things happening in your own chart. This is a lot to contend with, but we already talked about Saturn Pluto. The Neptune-Uranus conjunction, I see so much artistry, just people who are artistic in some way, shape, or form. You can't necessarily make money on it, at least not right now, but if you have it. But it's in Capricorn, so with age, perhaps. So if you have this and you are an artist, don't give up, but don't make it your day job necessarily yet. Which isn't to say, like, kill your dreams. That's not what I mean. But anyway, I see so much artistry. I see so much creativity. I see so much, like, different ways of thinking that are innovative and cool, but not necessarily, like, quote unquote, socially acceptable. Because again, this is in Capricorn. So, it's the struggle to fit in to Capricorn. And Neptune in Capricorn was a wild time, which I'm not going to get into it in depth today. But wherever we have Neptune, we have idealism. And so to have Neptune in Capricorn of, like, aspirations of greatness, right? But that, and then tied to Uranus that are different, aspirations of greatness that are different and innovative and, like, breaking into new territories. Because remember, the early 90s, like, that was the tech boom. And so everybody was like, computers! And so there was this idealism, which that's the Neptune part, about computers, which is the Uranus part, and how computers were going to change our lives and, like, make everything great. And for a while, like the early days of the internet, everything was pretty fucking great, at least in computer land. And it's changed, and who knows what the future will hold, but that was the time. So, like, that's the energy that Pete Davidson came in on. And but the last thing that I want to say with this conjunction that, again, I see all the time is some severe anxiety. And it's just like Neptune tends to blow energies up, and Uranus can be quite the anxious planet, especially Uranus in a water house, which the 8th house is a water house. The water houses are 4, 8, and 12. Those are the emotional houses. When you have Uranus in a water house, it is just disruptive as hell to be to your sense of being able to sit still. Period. The end. I will never take that statement back. Uranus is it's really better suited to a firehouse which is 1, 5, and 9, because those are energies that you, like, project out into the world enthusiastically of, like, I'm here, I'm different. That's Uranus in a firehouse. In earth houses, it's more like, hey, let's innovate, let's shake stuff up, let's shake up the status quo. It tends to make it hard for you to get along with your colleagues, especially the ones who are, like, really stuck in their ways. Like, Uranus in an earth house wants to shake up the status quo a lot of the time. Uranus in an air house, which is 3, 7, and 11, likes to interact with people who are different. Like, it's just really cool to meet all types of different people. Uranus on a bad day is super autocratic, so beware. We don't, do we need more autocrats as friends? I don't know. leaving that alone. But Pete Davidson has, guys, like 6 planets in the house of overthinking things, 3 planets in the 8th house, which is just like emotional depth. One of those planets is Uranus, which it just makes it hard to calm down, which Scorpio can be quite difficult to calm down when it's riled up. But Scorpio is capable of being calm. And then Mars on the North Node, which I don't think I'm gonna touch too much today. I don't think I need to. It just like, but the North Node enlarges energy, and so, and also like, you can find blessings or gifts, especially with planets on the North Node. You can find gifts with planets on the South Node, but they're gifts that need to be used wisely. You have a little bit more wiggle room with planets on the North Node, but the North Node can also just enlarge energies. And so to have Mars on the North Node and Mars in Sagittarius, like, that's great for a career in comedy. It honestly is. And especially since it's very, very close to the beginning of the 7th house, like working with partners, like comedic partners, great for that. But for sitting still, not great. Which, does he need to? No, but can you see that I'm trying to like paint a picture here? The other thing that I want to say, and this is just like what Neptune is notorious of, is that how I want to say it? And Neptune in the 8th house is notoriously like having a secret death wish. And I'm not saying that this is him, but I am just saying that it is something that is textbook and something that you do see a lot, because it's like, Neptune likes to escape. So whatever house it's in your chart is a clue as to where you like to escape. I will tell you mine because I mean, it gets used so many different ways in my day-to-day life. It's on an angle, so I have to use it all the time. My Neptune's on the midheaven, which is why you're hearing me talk right now, because I just have like the ability to understand astrology really easily, and that comes from Neptune on the midheaven, like with the rest of my setup, which I won't go into. But the midheaven is like your career, and I notoriously escape into work. Like, I love to work, and I also love to hide from my problems at work. And this is too much information about me, but like when I got divorced, when we made the decision, I was on quote unquote vacation. I was on a staycation. I just went into work the next day because I was like, I don't want to think about that. I'm going to work. Okay. So that's an example of escapism. And that's really weird escapism for me personally. But just like look at the Neptunes of your nearest and dearest and think about their patterns and habits and what they might escape into. So Neptune in the 8th house can be like, wouldn't it be nice to just die? I'm not being crass. Like, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but that can be the like secret wish, I suppose, of, all your problems go away if you just die. And so if you have Neptune in this house, you might be more cavalier or more willing to take risks that other people wouldn't take because other people have Neptune in other places. So this, like, and it can be this idealization of death. Wouldn't it be nice to just die? I know that's weird. I apologize if that's disturbing, but it is something that you do find all over textbooks about Neptune in the 8th house. It can also, the 8th house, so the 7th house is where we get married. So the 7th house is about a partner or an open enemy that you agree is your enemy. It's anybody who you're like standing and facing, and you can like hold hands while you stand and face them, or you can flip each other off while you stand and face them. But that's the seventh house is the house of like seeing eye to eye. The eighth house is the soul merging house. So the drive when you have planets in the eighth house is to like get into someone's soul with them. And yes, that gets awfully claustrophobic really fast, especially when you have Uranus in the eighth house. And yes, I'm switching planets away from Neptune. Like, Uranus maybe intellectually can get close, but emotionally, there's definitely vacillating tolerance levels, I will say. And I don't know if that's global, but I'll just say it. Because Uranus is not the warm, fuzzy, close planet. Neptune is. Moon is. So there's a push-pull here in this eighth house with 2 out of the 3 planets would be more than fine getting lost in someone else's psyche, consciousness, psychology, etc. Uranus, not so much. So one of the 3 votes with a strong vote is going to be like, this is an I love you, go away. Again, don't know him personally, but that would be my guess. Okay. Now, have I painted the picture enough in terms of like this is an intense planetary alignment setup? There's intensity, there's mental illness challenges, because we know this about Pete Davidson. He has a history of substance abuse. He's been in rehab. And with a chart like this, I don't blame him. I would be too. I would have all the problems and more of the problems. This is a shit ton of energy. I do not know how I would manage it. I struggle to think about what it would be like to have this much intensity in my life. And I was called intense 2 days ago. I was just told, like, you do abnormal things in terms of just like the amount of work that I do, and I'm a swimmer, so I'm always at the pool. And, just being told that I'm intense, and that kind of put me back on my heels, being told, like, oh, what you do is not normal. So coming from that standpoint, and then thinking about this energy in this chart, it's like, I cannot even begin to imagine what it would be like to try to, like, I just get the sense of, like, or the mental image of kind of trying to keep reins on a horse that's just not having it. So yes, I hope that I've painted the picture of that like all of this is a lot to try to understand and manage and figure out how to work well. And it would be like, just like anybody's chart, fits and starts, and like this worked really well, this didn't work very well, etc., etc. But what we haven't talked about is the fact that this guy is Gemini rising. And so he is a really good example of somebody whose rising sign is absolutely not a match for the energy that he has. I actually know way more people who are Scorpio rising who are Gemini suns than Gemini rising who are Scorpio suns. But Gemini rising is just like funny, affable, self-deprecating, like lighthearted, flitting about, and people with Gemini rising also can't sit still, but for different reasons. I just mean Gemini rising, not any of the rest of his planetary energy. So again, it's like your rising sign is the first impression and the way that you come off to people. And then you get to know people's sun signs and moon signs as you get to know them. So like he would seem funny, and then you get to know him and he's like actually really intense with the Scorpio sun, Pluto conjunction and Capricorn moon. And so like he's just a really good example of what you see is not what you get, versus the, like, again, this isn't pictured here, but like the Scorpio risings who are Gemini suns seem really intense, and then they're cracking jokes and they are intense, like they're staring you down while they're cracking jokes to see if you truly got what they meant when they said the thing that they said that was like complicated but also witty. This Gemini rising works in reverse of just like saying the funny thing, but then you look into the person's eyes and they're, screaming on the inside, like, help me. So I have a tremendous amount of compassion for Pete Davidson for the reasons that I already enumerated here. What I think is interesting about the energy that he's got going on right now is he has Pluto squaring this Jupiter here, which is the 7th house ruler, and will square his Mercury, which is his chart ruler. But where Pluto actually is probably pretty close to a midpoint between the two of those things. And so I would read this as it's a possible and hopeful turning point for him. I hope that the baby that he's having is a blessing and helps him to find additional definitions to his sense of self. And I'm looking at this Sun Pluto because that's another thing that you can do with Sun Pluto. Like, the sun is your reason to exist. And with the Pluto conjunction, you need a really good one. And the more reasons that you can find to give yourself meaning, and I say this for everyone, but especially people with Sun Pluto, the more things you can give yourself to do that really have a lot of meaning, the richer your life is going to be. And hopefully the harder it will be to get down in the dumps about things that didn't work out. Scorpio does love to ruminate, and water signs can love to feel sorry for themselves. So the more positive things that you have to hold on to and to motivate yourself can be life-changing. And I guess that would be the hope. So we're all works in progress. I do wish this guy the best. Fascinating chart though, Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.